So orbs of blood, why orbs of blood? Because you'll see that the movement of blood here, the circular movement of blood, is based on astrology. We are in the pre-modern world. We are in a geocentric worldview. This is the center of the cosmos. It's actually explicitly stated in the manuscript. We're at the center of the world and everything turns around us. And therefore, the heart being the center of the body, everything turns around it. The blood turns around the heart, and we have a circulatory model of the blood that is not based on modern physiology, modern science, experimentation, but pure astrology, cosmology, and metaphysical beliefs. All right. So you saw the manuscript. And we'll talk about the geopolitical context, the author, Rashiduddin Hamedani, briefly, and then brief conclusions. This presentation is based on a talk that I gave in Portugal and also a paper that I wrote with the great assistance of Ms. Kayal and Dr. Samuelson. It is out. I'll be more than glad to forward it to you in form of PDF. We said in this book that it describes the rotation of blood based on a model that is derived from astrology. We said also that this does not anticipate works of later authors such as Servetus and Colombo and ultimately William Harvey. We are in a totally different paradigm, if you want to use a Kuhnian terminology. After this publication, I had the great honor of talking to Justo Hernandez, who was one of the speakers here, and he gave me a couple of articles by Walter Pagel, and Walter Pagel truly changed my view on the history of blood circulation and history of medicine. What does Pagel say? Pagel says that early modern thinkers, they arrived to the circulation of blood, again, not based on physiology, but by cosmological beliefs that things are driven by geometry and geometrical figures, such as you find in Plato. And then we find this, it kind of echoes a certain a certain vision of the history of science, of the history of medicine, that Alexander Koyré has advocated, that before you have medical discoveries or scientific discoveries, often you have metaphysical beliefs that drives it. The idea, for instance, a heliocentric worldview is not a new idea. It's been around since the Egyptians. However, we didn't have proof of it. Galileo, Copernicus presented the proof for it. Here we go. So we attribute it to them. However, the idea is not of them. The idea comes from, it's a long-standing idea. The same thing applies to the circulation of blood. And so Walter Pagel was a German historian of medicine. He says that the Platonic historical and Aristotelian cosmological traditions have contributed to the vision of blood, circulation of blood as a loop, as a circle, because the circle is a perfect model, is a perfect shape. And Pagel argues that Harvey was driven by that belief, and therefore he looked for data, he utilized experimental physiology, and he arrived to the conclusion and was able to prove it. All right. So as I mentioned to you, there's one copy of this manuscript. It were 4, 3 are lost. It's a thick manuscript, now 256 folios, 500 and over 500 pages. It has Arabic in it, it has Persian in it, and it's Chinese written in Arabic script that has a name. It is apparently still practiced in parts of China. It's called Xiao Jing. Illustrations, you saw them, long introduction about the genesis of the book and how Chinese have such advanced technologies that made the author send people to China in order to learn it and bring back some of the manuscript so that they can write a sort of a genesis, sort of a condensed version of the medical books of China. Okay, this is the colophon. It says the 12th of Shaban. The 12th of Shaban of the year 713 is December of 1313. Depending on the conversion algorithm, it comes up with different numbers. But we can say safely it is mid-December, first to mid-December, year 1313, those early 14th century. We're talking about 300 years before William Harvey. The library stamps show the journey of the book. Sultan Mehmed I in the 17th, 18th century. And then at the end of it, there is also another stamp that says that it was brought to the Ottoman Empire centuries before. Rashid ad-Din, who commissioned this book, he didn't write it himself, he was commissioned this book. He says in the introduction that was written definitely by him because he talks to me in first person. He says, I sent 3 people to China, Cathay, he calls it, that's northern China, and they brought with them some concise and abridged medical books that we translated and commented on. If you want to learn more, go see their own books. That's exactly what it says. This poem that I showed you is a medical poem called Maijue. Apparently, it was a common poem going around during that time. During that period, not only in China but also in the Muslim world, there were medical poems for practitioners who didn't know how to read and write, or didn't have access to books, to be able to remember things, so things will rhyme. For instance, even today they use in Iran, they say shalgam baraye balgam because they rhyme together, meaning turnips for phlegm. You know, the vegetable turnips goes for phlegm. Shalgam baraye balgam, the rhymes together. It's a common thing in these cultures. Avicenna apparently has a medical poem, same kind, that was meant to summarize and make memorization easily for practitioners. This particular poem is called Maijue. It is based on another book called the Maijin by a certain Wang Shuhe. What do they talk about? About Chinese sphygmology. What sphygmology is? The art of the pulse. You go to Chinatown in San Francisco, or if you go to Chinese neighborhoods in Europe, they have seen those herb shops, and these herb shops, they usually have these elderly practitioners, and they come and take the pulse, and they tell you you have excess heat, excess phlegm, your heart is weak, your liver is overacting, etc. Based on their own worldview and tradition, medical traditions. The book has also, as I show you some diagram. These are cosmological diagrams. Here you have the yin and yang, the Tai Chi, with the 5 elements of Chinese medicine, and underneath those circles represent the world. So these things, the yin and yang and the Tai Chi, gave birth to the 5 elements, which gave birth to the whole world, and everything becomes and transforms. And that's the essence of the book. As I show you, there are diagrams of I Ching that are represented in the book. Very interestingly, I was curious, the inclination of the yin and yang correspond to the inclination of the ecliptic compared to the celestial equator. It's very interesting. There are also some numerologies. Things have to equate to 5. 5 is a very good number. It's very interesting because if you breathe, you breathe 12 times per hour, roughly 12 times. And if during each breath you have 5 pulses, 5 times 12, 60, that's a sign of health. So 5 and 12 together here in this numerological worldview are good numbers. So there's a whole discussion about when the pulse is less than 5, meaning the heart beats slow, or it's over 5, either cold dominates or heat dominates, which can lead to such and such pathology, which you can detect by the pulse, the quality of the pulse, and the rate of the pulse. These diagrams, as I mentioned earlier, represent such a thing that I was able to, by coincidence, find in a manual of Chinese medicine and acupuncture. The phases of the moon are linked to organs, internal organs, to the hexagrams of I Ching, to the seasons, and also to the zodiacs in Chinese medicine or Chinese cosmology. These are the sections that teach you how to take the pulse using 3 fingers. These are the original manuscripts, as I show you, or as I mentioned, they are annotated versus the Persian is not annotated. And then the illustrated sources are very interesting. A certain Chinese physician in the 11th century was able to observe executions. And what happened during the executions, they cut some prisoners open, and he was able to draw. And as a result, you have a whole set of drawings of the internal organs. There are 10 panels, 10 illustrations of internal organs from different views. 7 of them are reproduced in the Tānksūqnāmah. You find these illustrations also in other books of Chinese medicine during that time. However, a lot of them are also lost. So the Tānksūqnāmah is also a book or a document that shows some of the earliest drawings based on Chinese dissection during the 11th century. All right, as you see, the illustration that I show you on the left side is an exact replica of what you find in older manuscripts. As you say, the Chinese original manuscripts are lost. The Tānksūqnāmah is quite contemporary to that. However, you find later manuscripts in China, in Asia, and also in Japan that represent the same things. Here you have the diaphragm and the organs that cross it. You have here the kidneys, you have the liver to the right and the spleen to the left, and the large and small intestine at the bottom. So the circulation blood, which is the main topic, this book says clearly that each day and night the blood makes 50 rounds in the human body. The word that is utilized is dawr. It's an Arabic word utilized in Persian. It's a borrowed word. Dawr means round, circulate, periphery, circle, and it's associated with khun. Khun is a Persian word, means blood, or dam, which is an Arabic word, same thing. Dawr mikonad means make circles. It is unequivocally referring to a circular movement. There is another word for flow, jaryan, which is also used, but here in this context, dawr doesn't mean flow, specifically means making circles, right? Quite interestingly, the Chinese classics do not say that the blood makes circles. They say the qi, which the manuscript has translated as either breath or spirit, makes 50 rounds. So this is not a mere translation of Chinese book. It's a commentary and transformation and a genesis of a new concept here based on Chinese sources plus the Aristotelian view of the Abyssinian tradition, plus Rashid ad-Din's own experience, own lectures, who has reinterpreted Chinese sources, and it says blood circulates 50 times per day. Why? Well, because I thought originally it was his idea, but seemingly from Walter Pagel, what Pagel says, this is something that was already known and already believed in. The book translates the qi by spirit and ru, and there is no conflation because there are distinct qi and shui. These are distinct words. Shui meaning blood, qi means, breath or spirit, or today energy, but I don't like the word energy because it's a modern construct. There is no conflation. The author clearly knows the distinction between these two things. There is a discrepancy between the manual and the Chinese sources, because the Chinese sources do not talk about blood, and the sinologist, the Palanchuld, says that there are no suggestion of rotational flow of blood in the Chinese sources. They talk about qi. It is Rashiduddin that has reinterpreted Chinese sources and says that the blood circulates 50 times per day. All right. Here I have some Chinese sources. Qi makes 50 rotations. And then the original idea, as I mentioned, is perhaps an ancient belief that was prevalent during that time. The fact that circle being a perfect shape and also associated with the planets, associated with the cycles, is perhaps what's driving blood in terms of movement. All right. These are this is another section where the author writes that blood is discharged throughout the 12 organs, which is like the sea, and returns to the liver. So the blood is generated in the liver, goes throughout the 12 organs, and then comes back to the liver. So exactly what we call circulation. Now, another thing that I wanted to mention is that the idea of circulation is not just taking Chinese concepts about qi and transpose them into the, Galenic Abyssinian worldview, because according to the Chinese medicine, the flow of qi goes from the liver to the lungs, the large intestine, and goes through a journey of spleen, stomach, spleen, heart. This is not what is described in the book. So Rashiduddin departs clearly from the Chinese model and comes up with his own. However, he says this is what the Chinese medicine is all about, and he says that the Chinese describe that the blood circulates. He either is reinterpreting the concept of qi in a different view, or perhaps there were some Chinese sources that are lost that were saying that qi and blood circulate. We don't know exactly. We are completely unaware of that. As I mentioned, there are some cosmological diagrams, and talks about, in these cosmological diagrams, he talks also about the transit between the heart and the lung. And he says that the breath or the spirit goes from the lungs to the heart, and the vital spirit comes back to the lungs. So there is a motion between them. It's not quite Ibn Nafis, but there is an idea of a type of exchange between the heart and the lungs. All right. Now, it's quite interesting. The book explicitly states that there were some cadaver-based observations. I want to point out here that when you live in the Mongol era, cadaver is an everyday event. There were, huge battles. There were thousands, if not millions, of people piled up in these battlefields, body decaying, dogs, jackals eating them, crows eating the abdomen wide open, people being executed, hanging, etc. You don't need to do dissection in the laboratory or in a specific location in order to see the internal organs of human body. They were everywhere. Decaying humans were everywhere. And then two, the heart of, for instance, mammals is almost the same. What changes between, say, a squirrel heart, a dog heart, a human heart, and an elephant heart is only the size. The structure is absolutely the same. So you don't need to do dissections of human heart to find out exactly how the mechanics of the heart works. All you need to do is to do that in the sheep, which they slaughter during some rituals of Ramadan, etc., etc. Or you go, in order to observe the heart, you go to the butcher shop, and then you observe how it's done, or it's cut apart, etc., because this is something they eat also. All right, the period, we are talking about the Mongol rule. If you're a little familiar with the geopolitics of Asia, you have here China, you have Mongolia, you have the entire Central Asia, that is Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, part of Georgia, Armenia, Iran, part of Iraq, Turkey, part of the Asian continent, and also Europe. These are all Mongol realm. And it was divided later on into four khanates. You have the khanate of the Ilkhans. Ilkhan means the subordinate. They were directly subordinate to the great Khan of China, Hulagu Khan. Kublai Khan. And you have the Khanate of the Golden Horde and the Chagatai Khanate, which is modern Afghanistan and Central Asia. And if you see, the Ilkhanate is approximately modern Iran plus part of Turkey. And Tabriz, to the far left, was the center of the Ilkhanate, which was subordinate to the Chinese Khanate. All right, so Ilkhanate period, and Rashiduddin, the vizier, he was a Jewish, he was born in a Jewish apothecary family. Hulagu Khan, when Hulagu comes to power, he's 9 years old. Baghdad falls. Hulagu's son, Abaga Khan, takes over the power. And then this is the time when Ibn Nafis dies. Interestingly, I'll show that also, that another author by the name of Shirazi says in one of his writings that, hey, I was in Cairo and I purchased some commentaries on Avicenna by this gentleman called Ibn Nafis, and now I'm going to write my own book based on all these things that I've read. So therefore, the ideas of Ibn Nafis and about this, the transit of blood through the lungs was known by the people who wrote this book. We are also at the transition period where the Crusader states are abolished. They fall under the Muslim dominion again. This is the time Marco Polo traveled to Venice. Marco Polo was in Tabriz when Rashiduddin was a ruler. He was not he was the vizier. He was the most powerful person after the Mongol ruler. So, and then this period comes to an end because the last Mongol ruler of Iran, by the name of Abu Sa'id, didn't have children. And then right after that, you have the plague, and it's truly the end of an era in terms of geopolitics, in terms of also population. All right, conclusion. Tānksūqnāmah is not a precursor to Harbian circulation. It's a product of Mongol Iran. It fuses Arabic and Chinese medical concepts. It describes blood circulation to analogical reasoning. Michel Foucault talks about an episteme of similitude. We are truly here in the heart of episteme of similitude that you find also in the Renaissance medicine. And there might have been some anatomical dissections, but it is not certain. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, I'm ready. We're a little bit ahead of schedule. And you can always reach me at Gmail, my first name dot my last name at gmail.com, or call me directly. I'm 9 hours behind you. Thank you.